Good morning, participants. Welcome to this second day of this FDP on recent trends and opportunities for research in electronics and computer science engineering, organized by Department of Electronics and Telecommunication Engineering at Goa College of Engineering. Now, for today's session, we have a resource person, Dr. Abhijit V. Nanderkar sir. He is Associate Professor in Electronics and Telecommunication Department at HGGS INT Nanded, Maharashtra. His highest qualification is PhD. He completed his research studies at IIT Kharagpur under Professor P.K. Biswas sir in 2008. He has been awarded a Career Award for Young Teacher for academic year 2008 and 9. He has presented his work in various reputed international conferences. His work has also been published in top impact factor journals. He is member of International Association of Engineers, Hong Kong, senior member of International Association of Computer Science and Information Technology, and also life member of Indian Society for Technical Education. Sir has been also included in biographical profile in the Who's Who in the World 2007 edition. He is also the reviewer of IEEE Transaction on Neural Network, IEEE Transaction on System, Man and Cybernetics, Pattern Recognition Letters, and other reputed journals. His research area include computer vision and pattern recognition. In fact, sir will be delivering 2 sessions for this FDP, today and tomorrow's first session. Now I request sir to start the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Samarth. So hope this is visible.
Yes, sir.
So good morning to all. So I thank Samarth Borkar for inviting me and giving me opportunity to talk with you. So I am going to talk on the topic called as say evolution of pattern recognition. So this is my effort to tell you about how the things have evolved, and the focus participants are those who are interested in doing research in this field and they are new in this field. So for them it will be a good thing to see what are the things in this area and how they can explore their opportunity in this field. So let us start this lecture. So those who are interested, so I'm giving you some reference books that you can refer to. So most of them are available on the internet. PDFs are available. You can download. So this will be the core thing if you are interested. This Duda Hurt pattern recognition, and this is a very good book. Then you can go through this book also. This is freely available. Those who are interested in neural networks, they can start with this book. Okay, so those who are interested in fuzzy logic, they can start with this book. And the recent thing, that is deep learning, so those who are interested in that, they can refer to this online book. So whenever the things will come, I will again tell you from where to read. So let us start the business. So why signal and image or video processing, why it is required? Now the basic thing we do using these tools, that is signal, image or video processing, we do removal of noise, we enhance say signals or images or videos, then we do some restoration. If there is some distortion, then we can remove it, or there is some part of the image missing, then we can do restoration. Then we can do segmentation, that means we can isolate objects in the image. Then we can do frequency analysis, that is what frequency is present in a given signal or image. So that is frequency decomposition and so on. So we do this in image or signal or video processing. So this is the basic thing that we do. Now, is this our final goal? So this is not our final goal. Final goal is something else. So these are tools to do something. Now the root of all this lies in this pattern recognition. Now let us see one example. So this is A, B, and C. You can see. Now I just change the things like this. So immediately this B now becomes 13. Okay, so this becomes 12, 13, 14. Earlier it was A, B, C. Now why this is appearing like 13 when I change the surrounding? So that is the question. Now if you see closely these images, can you recognize what is there inside? So if I ask you this question, if you focus on the image, you may see one old lady and one old person here, if you can concentrate. Or you can see one person sitting over here, the other person is playing some guitar kind of instrument here. So depending on your perception, individual's perception, the things will change. Okay, so where your brain lands and what it recognizes is a question mark. So same image, when you see or when two persons are seeing it, they will land to different zones of recognition. So this is one zone where I identify two persons sitting and doing some singing, and somebody else will land to this image, bigger image, where there is one old lady and some old person. Now this is one good example of the same thing. That is, I hope you can see horse here, and if I rotate this image by some degrees, say 90 degrees, then you can see a frog. Okay, so this is a perception. What you see in the image is a perception of your brain. So given some starting point, say this is my starting point of thinking, and then where I land. So I land maybe to frog, or my brain lands to a valley where in my brain there is storage of horse. So where I start and where I land, and that no one knows. So this is the beauty of our brain. So what we are doing in pattern recognition is we are mimicking our brain. So the key thing is perception of an image. So what you perceive out of the given image is the key thing. Now let us see this thing. We have some object here. Can you recognize this? Can anybody tell what is this? Anyone? So somebody has said orange.
Orange.
And it's orange only because if I add colors, then it will be more clear. If somebody is not able to understand this thing without colors, then you can get the things more clear when you have colors. So colors is one of the features of our brain. So brain tries to recognize the things using this color as a feature. Now this is the original image of an orange, and these are, say, cartoons of that. Okay, still with the ages, with this edges and colors. So edge and color. These are two things used in this image. So features are edge and color. Now the origin of pattern recognition lies in very early efforts of understanding intelligence. So what is intelligence? So it can be defined as the ability to grasp or understand and profit from experience. So this is the main thing that one should understand. What is intelligence? So it is the basic thing, and it is the ability to grasp and understand, profit from experience. So this is important, last point. Or it is also defined as capability to acquire and apply knowledge. Now, can you recognize this picture? Certainly, I hope everybody will recognize these monuments. So this is the famous Qutub Minar, and this is our parliament. Now, question is, how do you recognize these monuments? Now, answer was given by far years ago, say around 2370 years ago, and the efforts were done by Plato. So Plato was the basically known first person to define what is intelligence, I think officially. The concept of abstract ideas are known to us a priori through a mystic connection with the world. Okay, so we see the world, and concepts of abstract ideas are somehow stored in our brain, and he concluded that the ability to think is found in a priori knowledge. So whatever is stored in your brain, based on that you do something, and that is he called as intelligence. So what he concluded is that you see the world, you extract or grasp the basic concept of the world around you, and you store those concepts in your brain. So that is what is the intelligence. So stored knowledge. That is what his concept of the definition. That's why these images, when you see, you have extracted information about, say, this Qutub Minar or this parliament somewhere earlier in your life, maybe newspapers or TVs, news, and so on. So you have understood these figures somehow earlier, and whenever you see this next time, immediately you understand what is what. So that is the basic concept given by Plato. I hope there are many participants from different parts of the country. So can you recognize this object? Anybody?
Taj Mahal.
Okay, Taj Mahal. Anybody else?
Duplicate Taj Mahal, which is in Aurangabad.
So, madam, from where you are?
I'm from Hyderabad, sir.
Okay, have you seen this?
My father had been there, sir. In his album, he is having one black and white color photo. I mean, black and white photo.
Okay.
I've seen it in his album.
Right. So you're right. So this is not
thank you, sir.
a Taj Mahal, right? So this is a monument in Aurangabad called as Bibi Ka Maqbara. Okay. So this is, as she said, this is a duplicate of the Taj Mahal. This is not Taj Mahal. Now, many of you may not be knowing this about this monument, and they will, or their brain will land to the usual Taj object. Okay, so when I presented you this image, your brain landed to a zone where Taj information is stored, and immediately you will utter this is Taj. Okay, this is very close to that. I will show you both things. So if you compare the two things, the real one and this duplicate or the other one, so there is lot of similarity. There is lot of similarity. So can you closely observe these two photographs and tell me what is the difference? Can you point out the difference? Anybody? Can you point out? They look very similar, but they are not similar. What makes them different?
Sir, the difference is, this carving on the marble. Second, the size, we can see. Third, the picture quality, like, the color of the marble here in this Aurangabad monument, it is slightly blurred, but it is quite white. So this type of things are there.
Yes, exactly. You can see this width of this monument and width of this one. Okay, so base to say width to height and width to height of this is different. So this can be another feature that one can track and immediately say that there is this portion is extra somehow and missing here. Can you see that? So there are some differences, definitely. So once you understand what are the similarities and what are the differences between these two, now your brain is ready for recognition of these two monuments. You can now differentiate very easily or demarcate between these two monuments. Okay, that is our ability to adapt. So those who were new in your group earlier, not knowing this, now they know that there is something else do exist along with this original Taj, which looks like Taj, but it is not the Taj. Okay, now this information is newly added in your brain right now, and you have adapted it. That means your brain is continuously adapting. If this is not the case, that your brain is like hard disk, once something is stored, you cannot erase it and you cannot write something on that, then it will be very difficult life. So this is the concept that you can adapt as per the changing world was given by Aristotle. So Aristotle was second person who is a student of Plato. He criticized his teacher's theory that just only storing information in your brain is the intelligence. He said, no, that is not the only thing. And he said is that an ability to learn or adapt to the changing world is the key of intelligence. Okay, so it's very difficult to criticize your teacher, and you can imagine in those days how he could do that. Even today we afraid to do criticism, or I hope all of us are teachers, so it's difficult even for a teacher to face this criticism by a student. Now let us do one more experiment similar to the earlier one. So it is done on you with the help of you, and I am going to train your brain for few images, and then I will ask a question. Okay, so my basic aim is to tell you how this learning process is done in your brain and how we can mimic this in your computers. Why we are doing all this pattern recognition is to train your computer to mimic like human beings. Okay, so that is our basic aim. So let us start this experiment. Can you recognize the painter of this image? I want painter. Who has done this painting? Anyone?
Ravi Verma.
Ravi Verma. Anybody else?
So MF Hussain.
MF Hussain, right. So this is painting of actually MF Hussain. So this is also a painting of MF Hussain. Okay, so I'm showing you two images of MF Hussain. Now let us see one more image. Can you recognize painter of this?
So I guess Rabindranath Tagore.
Yes, it's Rabindranath Tagore. Now can you find out who is painter of this and who is painter of this? So those who were new to these two painters earlier, they must be now able to find out what is what. So the first one is again from Tagore and the second one is from Hussain. So the phase that we followed here is the first step is called as training. It's called as training phase. And then we do some processing within our brain and try to remember what is what, and then we did testing. So these two things or these three images that were presented to you, they were training images. Okay, they were used for training the brain, and then I don't know what happened in your brain, but you have understood what is what, and then you answered this question that this is image by Tagore and this is image by Hussain. So exactly what has happened, can you explain? Think about this process, what your brain has extracted by looking towards these images, and then you are able to answer this question. What your brain has done. Can you think for a while? How do you recognize that this is Hussein's image? Yes,
Sir,
anyone?
we find a similarity in last pictures because
Yes.
the holes are containing in the. Yep.
Yes. So horse is a trademark of MF Hussain. So if you see his paintings, most of the paintings include horse. So horse is a trademark of that painter. And here you can see some lady, then the smooth strokes here. And this may be the key to recognize the painting of Tagore. So our brain is extracting some features, and nobody is telling our brain to extract which kind of features. Seeing the image, seeing the surrounding, immediately your brain is so adaptive that it will start extracting features and record them with their labels. So whenever there is some image shown to you, you extract some kind of feature, and along with that you put a label in your brain. So congratulations, you have done the good thing, and your brain is very adaptive till now. Now how we learn to recognize the painters of this picture that we have seen. Now what exactly our brain is doing, that actually we don't know, but there are some studies what exactly trying to extract what exactly is going on, and that hopefully we will go up to that. Now the key thing that we know, we do some feature extraction, and based on that we do some object recognition. Now let us see the definitions of pattern recognition. So what is pattern recognition? So pattern recognition deals with the problem of identifying the underlying structure of data. So it can be defined as the search for the structure in the data. So you are searching for some structure in your data. It is also the science and art of giving names to the natural objects in the real world. And then what is artificial intelligence? In today's context, it refers to the simulation of human intelligence in machines that are programmed to mimic human behavior and their action. So this subject is very old. If you see this literature, you will see that this is very old subject getting popularity right now. This machine, you may be coming across the word machine learning or deep learning and so on. So these things are maybe looking new to the entrant, but they are quite old and they do exist quite long. Now, what is the importance of pattern recognition? So the pattern recognition actually is the key name to this field, and the other things are subsections of this pattern recognition. So this is a base actually. The need to add intelligence to machines to automate work with flavor of human skill. So this is the importance of PR. Then heavy demand of data processing and searching. So Google is the best example of this. And need of easy interfaces to communicate with computing machines. So this is also very important. How do you interact with your machine? Now let us go to the definition of what is a class. So whenever you see pattern recognition, the basic problem that one handles is classification. Now when you see classification, then what is class? The question arises is, first of all, what is class? Then we will see what is classification. So class is, say here I am showing you a pen class. It's a collection of some pens. So the objects which are used to do writing, they are collected together, and that collection or group, we call it as pen. So you can see these objects are totally different from each other. They look different. Their working is same, that you use it for writing. If you extract feature of this, if you extract feature of this, their shapes and their colors are different, but still they are all are pens. Okay. Similarly, when you go to some eraser class, you have different erasers. You can see here, they are looking different. They are of different colors, but they are after all erasers. Now, thing is that even there is a variety within class, and they are of different shapes and colors, still they will be called as one object, that is pen or eraser. So doing this kind of a process, that is recognizing these two things, that they are separate. Okay, so that is the business of classification. So main objective of pattern classification is to separate the data belonging to different classes. So what is a class? Class is a collection of similar objects, or the objects belonging to same group. And what is classification? Classification is separating or the data belonging to different classes. Now, given a new data, assign them to correct category. So that is the job of a classifier. Okay, so when you learn that these two classes do exist and there is a partition here that separates these two things. So our target is to learn this partition. Okay, so this learning process enables our machine to understand that this part of the line is say pen and this part of the line is say eraser. So when you get to right side, there is eraser. When you go to left side, there is pen. So this is done in your machine with the help of training. So what training will result, it will result into learning of this partition. Now let us see one example how this thing exactly happens in your machine. Say we have these 4 data samples. Say they are plotted here. Say these are 4 samples according to this data. Now what we have to do is we have to separate these blue dots and red dots. So this is our target. Say blue is one class and red is another class. For example, these are some features extracted from say 4 objects. This may be height of the object and this may be say width. So height comma width is my feature vector. So height comma width is extracted for all 4 objects and then we plot it and try to separate it. So maybe this is the line which is doing this job of separation. You can draw your own line. So any line which is doing this job is fine for me right now. And suppose this is the solution right now. So this side of the line, I call it as blue class. And this side is a red class. Okay. So this is how we do this classification, by separating the objects. Now, when you extend this concept to many classes and n-dimensional features, so there are situations where only 2 features are not sufficient. Maybe I require height, width, and depth of the object to identify or separate them. Then this becomes my 3-dimensional feature. This was 2-dimensional. Suppose I just use height and that is fine for me, then it becomes 1 dimension. And if I keep on adding features, then my problem becomes n dimension. Okay. So this is how we do it with a linear discriminant functions. That suppose I am doing it for 3 classes, then this line separates the class 1 and class 2. This line separates class 2 and class 3, and this line separates class 1 and class 3. Okay, so like that we can do the partitioning of our space where these features are available. Now the key challenges that appear in pattern recognition classification job is to handle intra-class variability, that is within the class, and inter-class variability, that is between the classes. Now what is that? Suppose I say letter T, and you can see variety of T available here. So this is T, this is T, this is T, this is also T. So all are T's. There are different types of T's, and no one is similar to each other. Okay, so image wise they are not similar, they are different, they look different, but we know what is meaning of these objects. Okay, all are the basic T's. So there is a lot of variety within the class. How do I handle the variations within a class is a question mark. And then there are classes which look similar to each other. Say this 0 is very similar to D, this B is similar to 8, this 2 is very similar to Z, I is very similar to 1. So this is also a big problem. how do I handle the classes or the objects which are very close to each other? So there is a problem within the class, there is a problem between the classes. Okay, and this is the key problem or key challenge in a pattern recognition problem. Now, if you see any PR system, there are 3 or 4 steps that you see prominently. The first one is obviously the input. So this may be signal 1D, 2D, or as per your choice, you may have many signals coming together. Okay, so these are signals coming to the system, and then we do this pre-processing. So what is pre-processing? Is cleaning the image. You just reshape the images such that they are recognizable. So removing noise, then filtering it out, and then do whatever you want to do is your pre-processing. So that is the tools we use to do this is coming from image processing or signal processing. So those tools are basic tools to make this signal clean so that you can extract proper features from them. So here you extract, say I said like height, width, or depth of the object. It's an example where you do this thing in an image. If you see 1D image, you may be doing some Fourier transform or wavelet transform and extract the coefficients of those things, and that becomes your feature. So given some signal here, you transform that and get a feature vector of the coefficients. That is also a feature and used for the classification of signals. So this is a general thing, and you can explore different things over here. So there are 2 things going on right now in research. The earlier approach was manual or doing the things. It is actually called as handcrafted features. Handcrafted means you are deciding what you will extract from a given image or a signal. That I decided that I will use wavelet transform or Fourier transform for a given signal. Then these are my features, and then I will send those features for recognition purpose. Now the second approach, which is now getting popular, is even to do this process automatically. Even feature extraction is done automatically, and that is with the help of deep learning. Okay, so the neural networks now are now designed, come with this feature, that is even extract the features automatically. Don't tell the system that you will extract height, width, or something like that. Let the system decides what it will require to recognize the objects. Okay, so this is the approach now getting popular. So whenever you see new research papers, you will see that they are based on deep learning. That doesn't mean that the earlier ones are not good. Even the earlier ones are very efficient. So if you know that particular feature extraction procedure is enough for my problem, then don't use this famous names like deep. So that is not required. So when you are knowing that only height measurement is enough to isolate the objects or separate the objects, then why to use deep? Because deep requires a lot of computation and very good hardware. Then only then you can use it. So economically it is not feasible every time to go for such kind of systems. So depending on problem, you have to choose. So doing something in PR is very critical. There is no direct solution available for a problem. See, this problem is given to you, then what you will require to solve this is totally different from the other problem. Okay, so every problem you have to understand and then find out what tools you will be using. So whatever I am telling you are tools. So whenever you say open some machine, like say your vehicle, then you require different tools to open it. Okay, say maybe screwdrivers of different sizes, pinches of different sizes. So those are tools. So depending on given problem, you will choose a tool. So similarly, PR is also that kind of a problem where there are many tools available to you. One must know that these are the tools available for me and what is the best tool to solve the problem. Okay, so after extraction, you will go to the classification or clustering or regression. So these are the key problems that a PR system handles. Classification is a problem where you have data plus label. Clustering is a problem where only data is available without labels. So there are no labels with you. Still you want to learn. Okay, so classification is that way simple because there is a label. That means, say I am extracting a feature vector for some object and then I am saying this is pen. So this is my label. Then I have some other feature, then I will say okay, this is a duster. Then I have some third feature, I will say okay, this is some pencil. So along with my data, so this is my data, I have a label associated. Now you can imagine a problem that if I remove all this thing and still I want to learn, then what is that problem? So that problem is then called as clustering problem. So simple example I can give here is, suppose these are all some marks like this. Then I said, okay, how many groups you can make from this data? So this is your data. So this is my data. How many groups you can make? So somebody may say, okay, I can make 2 groups. So as per his perception or her perception, you can make these 2 groups. Then somebody said, okay, no, there are 3 groups. Maybe this is one group, this is another, this is third. Okay, that is also fine. So depending on your requirement, you can make different groups. So how many maximum groups you can do? Maximum groups is the equal to the number of samples. Suppose you have n samples, say 100 samples, then each individual can be one group. So that is the maximum. But there is no fun in doing that. We are trying to make groups, not individuals as a groups. So at least I should have minimum 2 groups so that the problem can be a grouping problem. I cannot have minimum 1 group. That means everybody is in one group. So there is no fun in solving this. So whenever you see a clustering problem, the problem is in this, suppose I say K as number of clusters, then minimum is 2, maximum is equal to number of samples. So whenever you see clustering, it is grouping. So people use these 2 words interchangeably, but technically they are different. So when you say classification, it is learning with labels, and when you see clustering, it is learning without labels. Then the third problem that PR handles is the regression. That is function estimation. Say you have some function f of t, and this is time, and then you can say that, okay, I want to learn this function. What is this I want to learn? So this kind of thing is very helpful in real world problems like estimating prices in shares and so on. So, or estimating load on a system, say electrical system, what is current demand, what will be future demand. So based on some history, we may be able to predict that. So that kind of thing is called as regression. So these are three key problems that PR system do handle. Now, if you see the current scenario, then what are the applications you can see? You can see this recommendation system. So whenever you open Amazon, Netflix, and Flipkart kind of sites, when you open it and when somebody else open it, they will see different things on their browsers. So when you open, then maybe you are watching or you are being shown some advertisement about TV, and somebody else is opening, then it is showing some advertisement about dresses and so on. So it is a customized display by Amazon or Netflix and Flipkart. So when you see Netflix, the movies that you watch, they may be showing you the movies which you are interested in. So they capture your history and your behavior, how you see or which things you like to browse, and they remember your choice. So whenever you log in next time, they start showing you automatically what you like. Okay, so that way they are tracking your brain. So it's very that way uh, handling your brain, and it may be dangerous in that way. It is attacking on your personal things. But this is how these sites are working, and they are doing the advertisement and making more money out of the things. Then targeted advertising. So this is also one example of Google. So whenever you open some site, maybe it's a newspaper, and you're opening it in Google Chrome, some advertisement will pop up here and there, and that is thrown by Google on that site. So it will embed its advertisement along with that newspaper or whatever site you are seeing. And they look embedded because Chrome is also a product of Google, and you're watching on that platform. And these advertisements are customized. So they are shown as per your liking. You browse the things and Google Chrome captures your habit, and it is storing the features of your habit, okay, automatically. And when you see something, those advertisement will come along with those sites. You can experience, just do this experiment after this class. You you visit some say maybe Google, say this Flipkart or Amazon, and then you browse for some t-shirts or shirts like that, and then don't purchase it, just leave that thing. You do through your account, just search it and just leave it, and then you will see that maybe tomorrow automatically you will see those things in this place whenever you see some newspaper or something like that. So things are moving like this with the help of AI. Then we have a spam filter. We have spam filter that filters out the unwanted images. Then there are systems to approve loan, credit card to an applicant based on your history. So all these things are happening right now. Malicious site detection. Then these are some examples. Those who are interested in doing research in this field, they should concentrate on. These are quite open problems. There is no perfect solution for these problems. So every problem is new problem. It may look old, say like example, is handwritten document is given to you. When you scan it, you have to convert it into a doc file. So this is an image. So image is converted into a doc file. So this is that way some old kind of a thing, but still it's open. There is nothing like a perfect thing. Okay, so this is for English, maybe for Marathi, maybe for Hindi, maybe for Tamil or Telugu. Nobody has worked properly. So things are available for English, but they are not available for our local languages. So this is an open problem. Then you may have visited many times to a toll plaza, and nowadays they are coming with these kinds of number plate recognition systems. So whenever your vehicle is moving through it, it will do all kinds of analysis for a given vehicle. Then there is a biometric field which is available with the researchers, that recognizing fingerprint, facial recognition, say signature recognition, iris recognition, say gesture recognition, and so on. Then this is the goal, this is the ideal thing, that a vehicle will travel automatically. So autonomous vehicle, this is also going on. Then this is a field where one can work is, given an image like this, generate medical report automatically. Okay, so it will help the doctor to analyze the images, and particularly a doctor who is not expert in that field and ready expertise is not available. So this computerized system can assist a doctor like an expert. So this is a good field where these kinds of reports are generated automatically based on a given image. So this is upcoming field, you can explore it. Then this is a land cover classification. So satellite images are given to you, and then you have to do the classification of different zones in this image. So this is some aerial shot or satellite shot. You can then do this classification, where is vegetation, where is water, where is buildings, and so on. Now there are many applications as I listed. So this is a very good example of a defense system. So this is called as JADAC2, Joint All Domain Command and Control. This is from US Defense System or US Defense Department. The concept to connect sensors from all the military services. Okay, so there are different sensors for different military services like Air Force, Army, Marine, and Navy, and so on, and space even. So they now are integrating all these things into a single network. So this is going on right now there. So this is a single network which interacts with different defense systems. Okay, so JADAC2 is really the backbone of the future force for US, and you can see this documentation on websites. Recently, there was a change in the director of this Joint AI Center USA, and the this director is Michel Gorian. So what he thought about AI, he has given some quotes. So when I think about the artificial intelligence applications, I am thinking beyond just use case of near instantaneous fire upon the detection of target. There is a broad range of decision making that has to occur across the joint force that can be enabled by AI. Even your decisions about how to surge forces into theater and the sequencing of your maneuver on the ground. So what it means is that even though there are different departments in defense and they should be joined in on an AI-based platform such that even the movements of the army personnel depends on that system and depends on a joint effort. Okay, they should not do thing in isolation. So there should be a joint effort, that information should go from one department to other seamlessly. Say something is observed by space agency that there is some movement of enemy, and that should be transmitted to everybody related to that area. Maybe it is marine or it is land and so on, and their sensor information should go to the space and then go to some other cyber area, cyber defense and so on. So like this, there should be a joint effort, and this should be AI based. So that is their thinking. So they are doing it through AI. So AI is now the hardcore business. It's multi-billionaire kind of a business. Now we will see what are the main phases in a PR system. So there is a training phase, as we have done one experiment that we saw some images and then we extracted some features and then we could learn. So there is a training phase where data is presented to a machine. It is pre-processed, then features are extracted, and these features are used for learning. So what is final outcome? Final outcome is this model. This model is coming through the process of learning, and this will be used in test phase. So what test phase means, your system is now deployed in real life. So there is a physical environment. Then from that you will extract the features in the same way that you have done here during training. So this block is that way repetition. So there is some data acquisition through sensors, and you do pre-processing, then you do feature extraction, and the ready-made feature is then given to the model. So this is the classification block which is coming from this model, and then you do this decision making. So this is the overall idea of a PR system. So whichever system you see, these blocks will be there in some or the other form. Now, how do I approach to a problem? What are the tools available in PR system? So there are many ways of doing or solving a problem. So depending on, as I said, given problem, you have to choose a particular tool. Now, what are the approaches? So you can see a classical approach or a Bayesian approach, which is very famous, based on probability and statistics. So early efforts of PR, you will see that probability and statistics has played a very important role. Okay, so the old approaches you will see are based on this technology of probability and statistics, and that is called as Bayesian approach. So I will give you a glimpse of what this means. Then the second approach is ANN based, that is artificial neural network. The third approach is using fuzzy logic. Then you have rough sets. Then you have genetic algorithms. Then you have a fusion of above. You can mix all this, and then it is called as soft computing. Say I can mix the two things, like I can have fusion of artificial neural and fuzzy logic. So that is called as fuzzy neural networks, okay, or neural fuzzy systems. So it will be a fusion or hybrid approach. So all such hybrid approaches are under the umbrella called as soft computing. So you might have came across these words earlier, and actually they are nothing but pattern recognition tools. Okay, so whatever you see, these are tools. So under this ANN, you have now becoming popular method called as deep learning. Okay. Now let us see this classical approach, many times called as Bayesian approach. It's quite old. 1763. So the basic idea was to extract underlying probability model from the data. So basic idea in classical approach is to extract the probability model from given data. Now what we do there is, based on the extracted probability distributions, we do this thing. We have a posterior equal to likelihood into prior divided by evidence. Now what it means? So in short, I will tell you what is that. So this part, this probability called as the posterior probability, where it is a conditional probability. What you are talking about is the probability that given input X belongs to certain class omega j. So what is input to you? Input to me is some feature vector X, and then I want to predict to which class it belongs. So this probability that it belongs to jth class, given input is X and it belongs to jth class, is probability omega j given X, and this is my prediction. So this prediction is called as posterior probability. Now this posterior probability is based on basically three things. The first thing is called as likelihood, the second thing is called as prior, and third one is called as evidence. Now to do this prediction based on Bayes, so this is a Bayes rule. So this is my Bayes rule, and this is how I implement it. So what is the first term here is probability of X given omega j. So there is a difference you try to understand. Probability of omega j given X and probability of X given omega j. So what is the difference? Can anybody throw light on this? The basic probability actually. So it looks very similar. Probability of X given omega j and probability of j omega j given X. Now here it is called as, this one is called as likelihood. What it means is the distribution of X, the distribution of X within a given class. Okay, so we have some data. Say data is given to me. There is a data of say omega 1, there is omega 2 data, omega 3 data, and so on. Let us consider some omega jth data. Now within this omega j data, how this X is distributed? X means some feature vector. What is the chance that I will see this X? Let us say I should take one example. Suppose X is equal to 5, given omega say 1 is equal to, let us say, pen. Suppose I am measuring height of an object in say some centimeters, and then I have a class called as pen. So I have some objects which are pen objects, and then I measured height of all these objects. So omega 1 that is the pen class. Suppose I have some data 5, 6, 7, then 5 and 8. Okay, these are some 5 objects which are pen objects, and then I have collected their heights. Now out of 5 total objects, 2 times 5 is appearing. So 2 by 5 is the probability of obtaining x is equal to 5 in omega 1. So here I am talking about the omega 1 class only. I am not talking about pencil or duster. Okay, so within that class, within a class, how features are distributed, if I want to extract that information, what is chance that if I give you some measurement, what is chance that that thing is available in omega 1? So this likelihood is talking about the distribution within a group, within a class. Then what is this side? The left hand side, when you say x is equal to 5, I have this data. Is it a pen? Is it a pencil? Or is it a duster? To answer this, what I do, I find out the probability of x, probability that given x is equal to 5 is pen, probability that given x is pencil, probability that given x is equal to 5 is duster. So this probabilities, if I find out and then I choose whichever is max probability as my answer, then this approach is called as Bayesian approach. Okay, so this is posterior. This side, left hand side, is a posterior based on the right hand side, that is likelihood. Then what is prior? Prior is within a given domain. There are say different classes with me. What is chance that omega 1 appears? What is chance that omega 2 appears? That means if there are 100 samples, out of say 10 sample belongs to omega 1, then 10 by 100 is chance of omega 1. Okay, so this is how this omega 1, probability of omega 1 is calculated, and it is called as prior. Now the last term is called as evidence. So evidence is the evidence of x equal to 5 in my problem domain. So whenever I say I have some measurement x equal to 5, now what is chance that this x equal to 5 will appear in my problem domain irrespective of the classes? Whatever may be the class, it may be omega 1, it may be omega 2, it may be omega 3, and so on. Irrespective of that, what is chance that I will see x equal to 5? Okay, so that is evidence of this given x. Okay, so this is how this works. Now let us see one example. Say these are some one-dimensional features extracted. Say these are all one-dimensional features. So this is my data. Now this data is divided. So there are 15 samples with me. Now this data is divided into 2 groups. So this is omega 1 and this is omega 2. Now class 1 consists of these samples and class 2 consists of this sample. There are 8 samples here, there are 7 samples here. So if I plot this probability, say like this, values of x, and these are the number of samples divided by total number of samples. So that becomes the probability. Say 0.1, how many times it is appearing in say omega 1, then you can see it is appearing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Maybe 5 divided by 8. That will be the probability within omega 1. Okay. So if I want to find out within the problem domain, then I should count this point 1 here also. So that will be 5 divided by 15. That will be probability of x equal to say 0.1. Okay, so this is the evidence. Now question is, if the current measurement is 0.1, what is the probable class? So how do I solve this? So I take the thing, actually this is coming from the joint probability. You can easily derive this. So when I say probability of x and omega j, I can write in terms of the relative, or sorry, conditional probability of x given omega j into probability of omega j. This is also can be written as probability of omega j given x into probability of x. So this is 1 and this is 2. If you equate, this will be the equation. Then you just take this term to the right hand side, left hand side, then you can rewrite this like this. So this is my base equation. Now, which is we have discussed earlier, posterior equal to likelihood into prior divided by evidence. Now we can go back to our problem. We want to predict if x is equal to 0.1, what is chance of being it in omega 1, what is chance of being it in omega 2. Now here we can see probability of 0.1 we have calculated here. It is based on this data. It is 6 by 8 into 8 by 15 plus 1 by 7. So we are using here sum rule of the probability. And then we find out the probability of 0.1 in problem domain. Okay, then what is probability of x given omega 1? So within omega 1, what is chance that I will obtain 0.1? Just count it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times it is appearing out of 8. So 6 by 8 is the probability of 0.1. Now what is probability of omega 1 itself? So 8 times 8 samples are belonging to omega 1 and 7 samples are belonging to omega 2. So 8 plus 7 is 15. So 8 by 15 is the probability of omega 1. So you substitute this thing. So 0.75 is the likelihood, 0.53 is the prior, and 0.46 is the probability of x equal to 0.1. So if you substitute all this, it comes to 0.86. So this is the probability that given input x belongs to omega 1. Similarly, we can calculate given x belongs to omega 2. Since this is just 2 class problems, I know that sum of these 2 must be 1. So this will be 1 minus 0.86. I need not do this calculation. So this may be 0.14 or so. Then based on these two things, 0.86 and 0.14, I just go with max. So max is 0.86. So my class must be omega 1. So I declare my decision as omega 1. So whenever I see x is equal to 0.1, I am going to declare that this belongs to omega 1. Doing so, remember that it is a chance. It is not damn sure. So it is a chance that 86% times it will be okay, but there is error. So there is error is 0.14 means 14%. So 14% is the chance of your error. So it may be wrong 14%. Now this is how we do it, the basic base. Now you will see that you refer to book of Duda. Those who are interested, they refer to book of Duda Hart, pattern classification. I think second edition is freely available on net. You can use it, and you will see that within the first 2-3 things, 2-3 pages itself, this will come, and it will explain you what is this. And whole that book is dependent on only this posterior likelihood, prior, and evidence kind of a thing. So that becomes your base for the classical PR. Now slowly things will change in that book from classic this basic base formula to the different things in the PR depending on our requirement. Now requirement, suppose I change to this. Earlier my problem was x is equal to 0.1, classify this. Then I just use this data and I do all this processing, and then I came to the conclusion. Now a slight change. Suppose I ask you, if my data is x is equal to 0.15, then what is the class? Now then somebody will go into this data. It will see that there is no 0.15 here, there is no 0.15 here. Then probability terms here and here all are 0. So you just can't solve this. You cannot decide. Okay, there is no evidence. When there is no evidence, what to do? So in that way, we can stuck here. Now the solution to these problems, you will see that it is the parametric based methods. Parametric based methods, they are used whenever we face such kind of a problem, that during training there was some data and during testing you have some other data which is not available. Then you may say that there is no evidence, so probability is 0. What to do? So what we do, we fit now a model, a data model on using given samples. Suppose I say that my data is normally distributed. So this kind of shape is a normal distribution shape where you have some mean of your data, where certain variance of your data, then you get this kind of a shape. So this is a bell shape called a normal distribution shape, very popular and used heavily in PR based systems. So if I assume that my data is normally distribution. So remember, I am giving weightage to the word assume. I am assuming, I don't know what exactly my data is. I assume that it's a normally distributed data. Then I can calculate mean of my data. You take all the samples, x1, x2, and so on up to xn, and divided by n. So this will give you the mean of my data. Then you can find out variance of your data. Similarly, you can find out, say, x minus xi minus mu I, then whole square and so on. So you can find out variance of your data. So if these two numbers are known to you, you can throw your data. Okay, so you just process your data and find out mean and variance of your data. Once you do that, you can throw your data very easily, and just remember these two numbers. Then immediately you can predict or find out this probability for any data, any point. Okay, whatever may be x value, you substitute in normal distribution formula, then you can immediately find out the probability, and then you can use your usual formula, this one, You substitute values here and then you can proceed. So this is the adjustment done because we cannot solve or we cannot have data for every possible value. Okay, suppose I somehow get this information and later on I find out that I have this measurement. So I'm not able to get every time all this kind of variations in my data base. So I have to generalize it. So the process of generalizing this is modeling the data. So there are some drawbacks of even that system. If I assume the data distribution as normal, and if my data is not normal, it is something else. Say my distribution is of this shape, and if I try to fit a normal distribution on this, then that is the wrong thing. I should not do this kind of a thing. You will see that if I do that, say if I fit a normal distribution curve here, then in this zone the mean will fall, but there is no data available here actually. So actual data is here and here, and when I fit a normal distribution on this, my mean will stand here, and actually there is no data. So that should not happen. Or if you have a data of different nature, then you cannot fit a model like normal distribution on that. Then there are different approaches that you can use, multi normal distribution curves to adjust the data or model the data and so on. Then people thought of something new, that is, why to model the data itself? Is there any way that we will not fit any model, still the earlier problem is solved? Okay, that means I have a data like x equal to 0.15 kind of thing, which is not available in my data set. Can I solve the earlier problem without assuming any form on data? So the answer is yes, we can solve. The methods are called as non-parametric methods. Earlier is called as parametric because there our processing depends on two parameters, that is mu, mean and variance. So if I find out these two things, that means I'm finding parameters of the data and I can proceed. But if even I want to avoid that, then I have methods called as Parzan-Vitu method, then k nearest neighbor method, which are non-parametric method. They do not assume any distribution of data. Still they are able to solve those problems. So this is the story about the classical approach that is called as Bayesian approach. We can talk actually in more details on this, but I think it is just we should touch the basic motto behind this tool, and then we should proceed to further. So if Samarth is there, can we stop here and then start tomorrow?
Yes, sir. I think yeah, participant, if you have any question, you can ask, sir.
Yes, they can ask right now. And then my plan is to tell you tomorrow about neural networks and the other methods and explain the things. Is that fine?
Yes, participant, if you have any specific question or if you want any topic, so want to elaborate upon tomorrow, you can suggest, or your research area, or if you have any problem carrying out your research in this particular domain, you can very well ask, sir.
Any question till now?
Participants, your response, please.
No question, sir.
Okay.
Okay. So we can conclude the session now. Thank you, sir. Next session we will start at 11:30. Kindly note, everyone, participants. The next session we will start at exactly 11:30. We can have a half an hour break.
Okay. Thank you, Samarth.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.